So this is the first video for Measure for Measure. I will just begin with some quotes from an article that we looked at in lesson by Barbara Everett, which appeared in The Guardian, called The Pirate's Head, in which she describes, and I really like the fact that she does this, she describes the play. She says it's not a problem play as such, but it's more of a peculiar play. And she says that it advertises its own peculiarity, its strangeness, all the time. We can remember reading Isabella saying to the Duke that Angelo is a murderer. Is it not strange that Angelo is da-da-da-da? Is it not strange? And she quotes this, saying that it advertises its own strangeness. It is a peculiar play. So I'm going to continue to read out some of the key quotes from that article that I think are useful to reflect upon as you're revising. I'm not going to specifically look at extracts. You have your play at home, so I know you'll be flicking through that and reading, but these are some key quotes that I feel will be handy in the exam when you are thinking about how to include critical theory and response. So, yes, so she says, it possesses an extraordinary, peculiar quality, the play. It looks like the play derives from the problems of philosophy, to prove, in a sense, that not all questions can be answered. So it's a play which focuses on problems and says there aren't answers for everything. And she says here that Shakespeare produces, in terms of its structure, in terms of the play's structure, a broken or two-part play, which she comes back to later. Now, the whole comedy is characterized by a special density of broken wit, a cloudy and knotted luminousness. It takes a great leap into the center of disharmony, and its chief discordance or broken music is that of inner against outer, mind against body. Of course, we see this in Angelo's soliloquy. His soul battling in his soliloquy, where his soul is battling against his impulses and his human desires, and the awakening of lust in his snow broth, his blood, which has been described by others as snow broth, when he encounters the virginal, the chaste, the novice nun Isabella. So we see this battle between inner against outer, mind against body, as Barbara Everett states. I really like her reference to chief discordance, disharmony, the fact that it is made of, characterized by broken wit. And she also says that it is, in its first half, made up of debate and dialogue. It is abstract, intellectual, argumentative, and the arguments all turn on bodies. Sex, fornication, the bed trick, the stirring of Angelo's human desires and impulses, etc. So she's right. The problems, the arguments, the intellectual debates, and the dialogue, these all turn on bodies. The exchange of Isabella's body for her brother's life, his body, the heads being traded in the prison, the brothel, the bodies being traded there, Juliet becoming pregnant, and the law coming into place because the Duke disguises himself and goes away and delegates the role of Duke and ultimate power of Vienna lying in the heart and tongue of Angelo. Now, there is an embodiment of the law throughout. As I've just mentioned, the heart and tongue, the law lives in his heart and tongue. The Duke delegates to Angelo. The quote there would be, morality and mercy in Vienna live in thy tongue and heart. Embodiment of the law, which we've mentioned before in lessons. Barbara goes as far as to say, we might call the play a tragicomedy of embodiment. Tragicomedy of embodiment. In Measure for Measure, what is sought is reconciliation, some end of the war between body and mind. She also describes, which we've looked at in detail before, how Angelo and Isabella grind each other down in a pure conflict of egos, diamond cut diamond. They are very similar, they mirror each other, they've met their match in each other. She also states that the first half surely served as a paradigm for Jacobean tragedy, due to the erotic and deathly element in the atmosphere that permeates the first act. Everything seems to be edging towards tragedy with this erotic and deathly suffused first act. However, she then focuses upon Angelo's statement to Isabella, "Plainly conceive, I love you." Thus, Shakespeare has associated his character's desperate need to survive with real issues of human love. The scenes between Angelo and Isabella, and then Isabella and Claudio, display a balance between mathematical logic and psychological truth, like a chess game. Closing and mating moves. Like a chess game's closing and mating moves. In a junction of order and disorder made articulate in the play's glittering and slippery verbal style. Some of the play's most darkest, most peculiar moments, again that word peculiar, moments of humour come as we recognise how prompt Angelo, Isabella and even the Duke, disguised as the friar also, how promptly they are to prefer death for others as the best solutions for life's problems. This is an example of dark humour, I would agree. How readily they say, well, no, you just have to die, or that person has to die today, that problem solved. No, brother, be ready, fit yourself for death, it's done, I'm done. The play is specifically social and political, and the word peculiar again, peculiarly lacking in the type of love, romantic and affectionate, that harmonises many of the earlier comedies. So it does include love, but it's not the same kind of love, because as Barbara Everett states, it's specifically social and political. I'm going to do another video on the fact that it's a city comedy, revising that aspect of what type of comedy it is again, that we looked at in lessons. I'll come back to that. But she says here, the egos are solitary. There is nothing for them to do but discover themselves. So it's not really about the harmonising effect of love, but it's about discovery of who people are, who Isabella really is. Angelo having that moment of revelation in his soliloquy, and later when he thinks he has been a virgin violator and discovering who he really is. He's human. Even the Duke wishing to marry Isabella, later on he falls in love with her. He's just human. So I do agree that there is a huge element of self-discovery within the play. So this is part 1. I'll continue with part 2 later. Yeah, I hope that's been helpful.